Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Heidi Talks. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Right into the controversy. Oh god. I was looking at some pictures a friend took of a cute cat she found, and it was all adorable, and now I'm gonna go and make myself angry talking about this shit. Oh well. But as you probably saw with the title, this one is going to be a bit controversial, as kind of often happens with shit I talk about. But yeah, the much debated field of trans regrets. I don't even know where to start with this one. Not for lack of things to talk about. Quite the opposite. I could really drag this one out. This could be a long one. I don't know what the timestamp is going to be. Obviously, I'm still recording it, so now might be a good time to get a snack and get comfortable somewhere. You might be in for a long journey here. I'm playing some Raid World War II here. This came out like not too long ago, so it's a little bit bare for content now, but should scale up nicely in the future. Everybody knows complete games don't get released anymore, just kind of base games that get padded with DLC over time. Which has pros and cons, I guess. I can't say I hate the system without exception, but yeah, I'm just playing on normal. I'm not the best at this game. I'm not particularly good at any game I play, let's be real, but anyways, to the topic, as much as I wish I could just avoid it. Alright, well, first of all, I think I'm gonna offer a quick disclaimer that I'm not, like, a professional in any field. Like, I'm just, I'm 22, I'm trans myself, I haven't been to college or anything yet. I would like to go someday, but I can't afford it yet. The only way I feasibly could in the near future is if my parents would help me out, but that would require me to stay here and continue detransitioning, which we'll get into that later. I am currently in the process of detransition involuntarily because I can't afford my hormones, and I'm not pleased with the situation. I am not within the category of trans regrets, like very firmly not. So, yeah, that's the thing. I'm not like a counselor or anything, or like a surgeon or something, but I am going to be referencing some articles and stuff that I'm going to be putting in the description. So if you hear me talking about the three, maybe there's three, the three main ones that I can think of right now, there's an article by, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this name right, Brynn Tannehill, and it's in Huffington Post. I'm going to be talking about that. Frankly, that article is pretty much the entire gist of this episode. Like, if you don't want to listen to my fucking, like, weird teenage boy voice and watch me be terrible at this game for like an hour or two, you can circumvent this entire episode and pretty much just read that article. It's not exactly going to go into as much detail as I am, but it's probably not too much lost, honestly. But yeah, I'm going to be referencing that, and that'll be in the description for sure. The other one is an article by Vice that told the story of a couple of people detransitioning. Not so much involuntarily, but it doesn't really quite turn out the way a lot of you probably expect/hope it to. So I'm going to put that in the description, and I'll explain what I meant by that later on in this this diatribe. The third thing, or at least I think the third, there was an article, I believe, by the Federalist. I'm not sure. It's been a while. I'm going to try to find it and put that in the description. basically, it was an article I saw myself a while ago that pretty much has the exact opposite message of what I'm about to say. So those of you who came hoping to hear something that agrees with this article in the Federalist, or this figure known as Walt Heyer, prepare to be really disappointed, because that is not at all where I'm going with this. Quite the opposite, but yeah. God, I really don't know where to start with this. There's just so much shit. I guess I'm gonna start with Walt Heyer. Walt Heyer is someone who has detransitioned, and he runs a website called, I think it's Sex Change Regrets, which is like, I don't know. I don't see how it's taken quite as seriously as it is. He's written a book or two. I think one of them was called Paper Genders or something like that, and it had like a subtitle to it, but I don't quite remember at this point. But he's basically been on a crusade about this whole thing for a while now, ever since his own detransition story. It's... God, I don't even know where to fucking go with this. Like, if you go on this website, and I'm not gonna link to it, I don't want to fucking put that link in my description. I already gave you the URL anyways, you can just type it in and go there. But, or Google it if you have to. But, he's got, like, examples on his site, and there's only, like, a few of them. There's, like, 8, maybe, or something like that. Not including his own. And, like, 2 or 3, maybe even more of them, I don't remember them all, don't even have any kind of name or like news article or anything attached to them. They're just like a story that has no name, no face, no pictures, no documents, nothing. And it's just like, I mean, those could be real for all I know, but considering the source, I have to have my doubts. And even if they are, like, fair enough, and I know that, you know, some people have gone through this, don't want to out themselves for the sake of it. And I completely get that, because, you know, being out as a trans person is fucking scary. Whether you've had a detransition story or not, like, you know, if you have a detransition story, then of course the right-leaning side of society is going to use your story callously for their own agenda. And if you don't have a detransition story, then the more left-leaning side of society is going to be okay with you, but that's it. The other side is not. So, you know, either way you go, if you are out as a trans person, you either exist as a political tool for the right, or fuck, I got distracted, sorry. You either exist as a political tool for the right, or as just kind of an ally point for someone more on the left side of the spectrum. The far left, of course, where I come from, full disclosure, I believe is not particularly part of this phenomenon, of course, but like the mainstream left, like loyal Democrat voters, like, I don't know, they call themselves allies, but I really have to wonder how much of it is truly genuine and how much of it is just them trying to gain progressive points. That's a trademark term, by the way. I'm just kidding, it's not at all. But that's how it feels, like a lot of people just kind of say that they're part of the cause and everything, but when it comes to actually, like, putting their money where their mouth is, or hitting the streets or anything, they just don't really want to. Or like when trans people have complaints about the way they're doing things, they just don't want to listen. I could do a whole another fucking episode on that alone. I need to not go down this road right now. But I'm just trying to establish that I'm not, like, you know, saying that fucking, like, mainstream liberals get it right, because they fucking don't. Great, I'm just gonna go ahead and piss everybody off with this video, oh boy. I can't drive for shit in this game. But, yeah, it's scary being out as a trans person, and I can totally relate to that, unfortunately. But in this particular instance, like, there's kind of a responsibility here to, like, take into account that your transition regret story, while it is totally valid and you have every right to express it and, you know, have your feelings and have your concerns, you have to realize that it's only going to be weaponized against trans people who don't have regrets. Like, that's one of the things that pisses me off most about this whole situation is, like, the concern isn't for trans people at all, or, you know, people that might be trans but would regret it or whatever. Like, the concern is not for people. Like, it's just another opportunity to push for harsher regulations on transitioning. Like, people see these trans regret stories and they think, oh, well, obviously we shouldn't let people transition, or we should make it excessively fucking hard, which it's already hard, but these people think it's super easy, which I'm probably going to do another Heidi Talks on that too, because that is definitely a myth. I just hate that, like, you know, some of these people do have legitimate stories and legitimate grievances, and it's terrible what fucking happened to them. Like, if you're listening right now as someone who has detransitioned and you feel like you've made the right choice in detransitioning, then I'm not questioning that at all. And that was perfectly valid. And, you know, whatever you need to do to feel okay as a person, do it. Please. Do not worry about satisfying other people or anything, or like living up to some kind of stereotype. Just do what's best for you, and I have no right to judge anyone for that, and I don't think anyone else does either. But it's just that, you know, we do need to support these people, but the way that they're just being used as this bludgeon against the entire ability to transition in our society is just fucked up. Like, it is all kinds of just selfish and callous and fucking rude and just not productive at all. Because all we're doing is we're politicizing another thing that should be very much personal and subjective, and we're turning it into another fucking, like, left versus right slap fight. And it just needs to fucking stop. Like, I sincerely believe we're not going to figure out what's best for people, or the best way to handle this, if our entire approach to even thinking about or discussing the situation is to frame it as in, like, you know, I belong to this party, and so I have all of these beliefs automatically, and everyone who has beliefs other than these is automatically in the other party, of course, and they must be contrary to me in every way, and so I have to oppose them perfectly. I have to be their polar opposite in every aspect. Like, it just irks the fuck out of me. We're just using people's pain to, like, fucking put gum in each other's hair over the fucking political party we vote. I don't know. This whole thing might seem kind of rambly and all over the place. I don't have a script or anything. I never do. I usually have, like, notes or something in front of me, but I didn't even know we're gonna get started on notes for this episode. I remember a lot of the information that I wanted to cover. It's just figuring out, like, the order in which to do it and the way to, like, segue from one point to another. It's the most difficult part. Is that guy going inside, or? Yeah, as I said earlier, I'm not good at this game. Obviously. But yeah, I don't see anything good coming out of seeing people's detransition stories and either twisting them to fit this particular agenda and use them as a bludgeon against other people, or I don't know, I almost feel like some of these things are just straight up fucking made up. Like, I don't know that I trust all of these unsighted, anonymous, vague stories on Walt Heyer's site. I don't know. Maybe they are real, but still, even if they are, that's like 8 examples out of like how many fucking people have transitioned over the years. And that's another thing, is they're trying to say it's like way more common than you realize. They want people to think that like the majority of people who transition desire to detransition, which is not the case. The article by Brynn Tannehill cites, I believe it's Dr. Marcy Bowers, which is a surgeon that does reassignment surgeries. That's the proper term at this point for what used to be called a sex change. Bowers can attest to knowing very few such examples of people who regretted the surgery, and other studies have pretty much backed that up. And Bowers also notes that she does see regrets from, I believe she uses the term male to female in the article, but we don't really use that terminology anymore. Trans women, basically. People like me, for example. Trans women have regrets sometimes. I'm not going to like say that regrets are totally fake and there are never any. Like, if you're expecting that from this video, you're going to be disappointed. But it is interesting to note that trans men very rarely have regrets. And there are a couple of good reasons for that. If I had to guess, of course, like I said earlier, I haven't done studies on this or anything, but most people seem to think, and I would agree, that the main 2 factors are trans women are particularly disliked in our society. You know, like you talk about like the bathroom bill thing, and everybody's talking about trans women being in the women's bathroom, and very few people really care about what trans men are doing. And you know, there's the whole like trans women are perverts thing and men in a dress, but no one really talks about trans men. It's kind of a recurring theme for trans men as a whole, frankly. They suffer from a bit of invisibility in our community, which does suck sometimes, but I mean, there's also kind of a reason. Just the fact that trans women are seen as more abominable in a lot of ways, I think, and just generally disliked more and treated worse. But that's a topic for an entirely different video. Even I could do a lot of these. I need to get to work on that. Let's see. I think this is the last walker outside. Oop, nope. There goes that theory. But yeah, I think the reasons for that are A, that trans women are just way more reviled, and this is getting into something I wanted to talk more about later, but detransition. Oh, what the fuck? We got a fucking magic Nazi here. Okay, that was strange. Let's hope to never see that again. But a lot of people who do detransition don't do so because they feel like they aren't trans, but because it fucking sucks to be trans in a society that hates trans people so much. Like, one of the articles I mentioned that I was going to talk about, the Vice article, mentions 2 British trans women that are detransitioning, or did. One of them is, I think both of them actually, yeah, both of them are starting transition again. And let's see, I know at least one of them, I can't remember if the other one felt the same, but one of the two women that were detransitioning originally started doing so because it was just so hard to be trans. They're straight, so, which means interested in men, because, you know, trans women are women, unless of course you are kind of an asshole. But see, I think they're seeing those bodies, but I can't really clear them out if they have line of sight on this area anyways. So I think I might have to, yeah, but the fucking cat's out of the bag. We're just gonna have to start shooting. I'm only on normal, I'll be okay. One of the women in the article started detransitioning because men just treated her fucking horribly. Like, she would try to get with men and they would get sexual with her, but they didn't want like an actual relationship with her. Like, they saw her as just kind of like a fetish item, or like, you know, a story to be told but little else. And like, they didn't want to be seen with her in public. They didn't want to, you know, like, if they were out together, they didn't want to show any affection because they didn't want people to know that they were with a trans woman. And she felt like she didn't pass very well. She was like really embarrassed about her appearance and felt really self-conscious, and, you know, just all of the social pressure and feeling like she would never find love just made her feel like she had no choice but to detransition. She tried, but she, like, even as the Vice article was being written, like, the author was doing the research, but before they finished the research, wrote the article, and then published it, she already started transitioning again because she just felt so fucking terrible about her body while detransitioning that she decided that, you know, as much as being trans has problems in our society, being trans but not transitioning is shittier, at least for a lot of people. It's not a unanimous thing. Fuck, I forgot I had to go get the radio to call in the dynamite. Yeah, the other trans woman in that article also started transition again after being, actually, I think it was before even the Vice article came around. She was already starting transition again, but she was briefly in the news, and it sounded like kind of the same as the first story, but with less emphasis on like the dating aspect. Like, she just felt overwhelming pressure and felt like she couldn't handle it and had a mental breakdown and temporarily detransitioned, but she's trying to get back on hormones and everything, or at least was when the article was published. You know, she might have by now. I don't know how long ago that article was. There you are. I was looking for the fucking MG. I had to take that shit out. But yeah, these stories are definitely real, and they have faces attached to them. They clearly exist. They're verifiable. You know, these people could present like pictures or like medical documents or whatever to verify all of this stuff, but their stories are not on Walt Heyer's website because the conclusions they draw are not the ones Walt Heyer wants to hear and spread. So that there is something to think about when you're viewing Walt Heyer's website. He's passing up like legit, public, verifiable, known detransition stories, and yet he'll publish completely unverified, vague, anonymous, like short testimonies that are like just a paragraph of someone who supposedly detransitioned, and here's what they thought, and that's it. There's nothing offered to back any of this up. And it's just, that's really fucking fishy to me. I don't know about you guys, but... Let's see. Okay, I'm not seeing any other... Oh! There's one. Okay. But yeah, another thing I wanted to talk about was a particular study, often simply known as the Swedish study. And there's another one, but I don't quite remember the specifics of it. It's covered in Brynn Tannehill's article. It seems like more of the same as the Swedish study. Both of these studies have serious methodological flaws. The Swedish study, for example, what they did was they looked at a population of just regular ass random grab bag of cis people, and yeah, I used the word cis. Fucking cry me a river, you little shit. Piss your huggies, I don't give a fuck. But they studied just a random fucking bag of, I don't even know how they picked people. Just people walking down the street, I guess. Who knows? And that was their kind of control group, their baseline, I suppose. And then they looked at trans people who have had reassignment surgery, and they were looking at like depression and suicide and stuff like that. And obviously it was higher in the post-op trans people. And the authors of the study even note this problem themselves, but a lot of people don't really seem to have read that far in the study. They look at this study and they just use it for their own agenda again, like without even really examining its methodology and what the authors themselves had to say in the study. That, you know, obviously there was an uncontrolled variable here, and that is being trans. They didn't look at a random grab bag of regular ass people and then post-op trans people and trans people who have never had the surgery. But a lot of these people pushing this transition regret conspiracy theory almost, because a lot of them seem to think that the media is like burying these vast multitudes of transition regret stories, which is just not the case. But all of those people pushing that idea look at this study and they say this proves that having reassignment surgery makes people depressed and suicidal or whatever, and it's how? I think the problem is that being trans in a society that hates trans people makes people fucking depressed and suicidal. Like, the difference between the trans people who have had reassignment surgery and the control group of just people in general is there's not just one difference there. Like, the reassignment surgery is not the only thing setting those two groups apart, because the first group happens to not be trans as well, and that is a massive variable because trans people live vastly different lives. I mean, a lot of us are, you know, I would say pretty similar people, like, as human beings. Obviously, we're the same species and everything. We have, like, similar wants and desires and stuff, but just because of our place in the social order, things just don't work the same for us. Where the fuck was the radio? Was it in here? I don't remember which of these buildings it was in. If it was in either of those buildings. Okay, right, it was in here. And so, like, whether you've had reassignment surgery or not, if you're trans, you have likely experienced at least some degree of familial rejection. Maybe you've lost friends. Maybe you've been harassed on the street. You might have lost your job, or you might have been turned down for a job that you probably could have otherwise got. Might have been turned down for a promotion that you probably could have otherwise got. You might be denied opportunities that you would have liked to have taken advantage of otherwise. You might feel afraid. Afraid that somebody's going to hurt you. Whether it is rape, because trans women experience rape more often than cis women. Or it could be murder. Trans women experience a heightened rate of murder. It could be just an assault. which again we have a higher rate of as trans women. So there are all these things going wrong in your life that aren't necessarily because you're trans. Like, if you happen to be trans, like, you know, out in the middle of space where there were no other people, like, you wouldn't have these problems, obviously. The problem is how you're treated for being trans that causes these things. And so, of course, the post-op trans people group in the Swedish study are going to have more of a tendency to depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts, because even if they had never had the reassignment surgery, if they are out trans people in our society, that's going to be something they'll experience. So the Swedish study says absolutely fuck all about whether or not reassignment surgery is effective or helpful, or whether people regret it or not. I would really like to see a similar study done that does have a group of either pre-op or non-op trans people in it. Probably separate those two groups, because obviously they're different as well. Pre-op is not the same as non-op. There are people who want the surgery but haven't had it yet, and there are people who just don't even want reassignment surgery, but are still trans. So I would like to see a study that studies all four groups. That would be interesting, and that might tell us something, but the Swedish study as it was did really kind of nothing. But of course, the people on Walt Heyer's side of this whole thing just don't really seem to be particularly bothered about methodology in studies. At least not this one, but I get the feeling they're probably not particularly concerned about it with other studies in general. Just as long as they say something that they agree with, then they'll probably just take it. And if they disagree with it, then they might start looking for flaws in methodology, of course. Let's see if I can just get this body out of here really quick. Sorry, I'm a bit distracted. I would like to get to the end of this street and kill the officer before he gets in the tank so I don't have to burn him out of it. I hate having to do that. It's a pain. Let's see, where was I going next with this? I know there's more I wanted to say, but I can't fucking for the life of me figure it out. Okay, which one? I believe... Oh, he was right next to me. What? Oh, come on. He's fucking invincible already? God damn it. I am gonna have to burn him out of the tank. Shit. Well, there goes that plan. That worked out fantastically. Yeah, this isn't canned footage. I do these live, just for the sake of potentially interesting moments like that. But, shit, I feel like there was something that I really wanted to get to that I haven't yet. But I don't remember. Fuck, that's gonna piss me off. I don't want to call this episode here. There was something more, I know it, but I just don't fucking... I think I might have been about to share my experience with all of this. Actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was what I was going to do. Right. So, Marcy Bowers said about people who do have regrets that they are quite uncommon. They're not, like, you know, not out there. They do happen, but they are very rare. And most of them are trans women, which suggests that the issue is not, you know, transition in general, but rather an issue with how people are treated, like I was saying, because trans men are definitely treated different from trans women. And very few people who detransition because of regrets are trans men. And in my experience, that's been true as well. I've never known any trans men who have detransitioned because they regretted it. I know one trans woman who I don't think she necessarily regretted it, but she moved into a living situation where it just wasn't, she wasn't able to keep getting hormones, and so she just kind of let it happen. But I think if she could have kept taking them, then she probably would have. But she decided that her new life was worth the sacrifice. So, I mean, you know, that's completely up to her. And if she's having a better time, then fuck yeah, that's sweet. I'm glad. But, yeah, that's like the one case I know. And I've never known any trans men who have detransitioned voluntarily. I've known a lot of trans people, all kinds, who have detransitioned involuntarily, like I'm doing right now. It just happens. Hormones are, you know, if you don't have insurance, they're like $50 a month, at least where I live. They might be more expensive elsewhere, or less elsewhere, of course, but, you know, a lot of the times we just don't have work. So even, you know, like $50 a month or less can be just not feasible. And of course, you know, I don't have an income at all right now, so it's not feasible for me, so I don't have my hormones, and I'm fucking pissed off about it. But now that I have my license, I can start looking for work and hopefully fix that. I don't have any regrets about my transition. I will say that I regret coming out when I did. That's probably the only regret I have about anything related to me being trans, is that I came out too early. I should have waited until I was independent from my parents before I did anything, before I even told anyone at all. So that way, you know, they couldn't fuck me over quite the way that they did. Because, you know, if I already had my license and a car and a job, like, if they tried to kick me out, I could just go somewhere else and just keep on living. But the way that it happened, like, you know, I had to have backup plans in place, and I had to kind of coordinate with other people for transportation and, you know, keeping me fed and with a roof over my head and everything. And it's just been a mess. And I was, you know, I was kind of banking on my parents caring about me enough not to do that to me. And I should never have bet on that. They'll spend money on me, but I don't feel like they care too much further than that. I feel like a lot of the times, even what they do for me, they might do just because they feel socially obligated to. Like, if they didn't, the rest of the family would judge them. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's just how I feel sometimes. And I think, in a way, coming out when I did, and just coming out in general, I might have been trying to kind of, I don't know, like, mend things with my parents. Like, I wanted to give them kind of a chance to get involved with me, because even, you know, years before any of this started happening, we weren't getting along, and we had grown apart, and we just didn't have a very close relationship. And by telling them about this and kind of, you know, hoping that they would just, like, be there for me with this whole journey, you know, I was hoping that maybe things could go back to how they were before, when I was a lot younger, before we started kind of experiencing conflict. And, you know, I was thinking that we could bond over it, and I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. It was probably stupid, but in a lot of ways I hoped it would be something that would bring us together. But But that's apparently not what they wanted, so they kicked me out, and I had nothing. But they took me back in because I was about to be homeless, and they definitely would have been judged very harshly by the rest of the family for that, because like my grandparents are on my side and everything. So if my parents didn't take me back in, my grandparents probably would have given them endless shit for it, as well as like some of my aunts and uncles probably, and my brother. They're probably the only people on my mom's entire side of the family and in my immediate family that think the way they do. I'm sure my dad's family would probably be totally on their side, but they're also not particularly in the picture. We've generally had a distant relationship with them for a while, and his parents aren't around anymore. So yeah, I don't regret anything about my transition. I regret that I'm involuntarily detransitioning now. I should have been more careful in Raleigh about, nailing down backup plans in case we lost the apartment or we broke up or something. I should have figured that shit out like from day one, so I could have stayed out and kept my life going and kept my hormones, but I don't know. I got complacent, I guess. I felt safe when I was at Melissa's, which I was. It was great, honestly. It could have been better, and I made a lot of mistakes, but I had never really enjoyed my life from some point in my like early teens until I lived with Melissa. Like sometime around when I stopped getting along with my parents, honestly. I just kind of stopped thinking that I was ever going to have a good life. And that changed when I was in Raleigh. And, I'm not trying to like obsess over Melissa. Like, I'm not saying like I need to be with her again or I'll never be happy. I'm just saying that like, for once I lived with somebody that I didn't question whether or not they cared about me. And, whether I end up with her again or someone else that's the same way, like, I don't know. I got kind of lost there and a bit distracted because I got to run this generator. But yeah, as much as some of my whole getting kicked out adventure has been pretty cool and eye-opening, it really helped me grow in a lot of ways, because before I left my parents, like, I was really sheltered and just kind of like, I don't know, like babied almost. Like my parents didn't want my brother and I to have too much independence. They were very much like helicopter parents, I think the term is. Like, it wasn't until like high school when I was allowed to leave the neighborhood unsupervised. Or it might have even been, like, it might not even have been until I turned fucking 18 that I was allowed to leave the neighborhood without at least my brother, if not them as well. And, it was the same way with my brother and everything. They were just very, very, smothering. So we didn't have too much freedom as kids, and they did a lot of stuff for us without, like, really urging us to take responsibility for a lot of things, which made for, like, a very easy, like, passive childhood. I didn't really have to do shit, which, I mean, I guess that's kind of cool, but it also left me completely stunted as an adult. Like, I went out into the real world with no fucking idea how to do anything, and I kind of resent that. Because, I mean, when you're a kid, you don't, like, see your parents doing stuff for you and be like, oh, you shouldn't do that, I need to do this myself so I can be, like, hardened for the real world. Like, no, you don't think about that when you're a kid. You're just like, oh, cool, they've got it. Alright, fair enough. I'm just gonna fucking sit around in my pajamas then and not do anything. Because that's what you do when you're a kid. So, yeah, I regret that I came out as early as I did. I should have been independent first, so that any retaliation would have just been kind of like emotional and verbal instead of like fucking with my entire like living situation and everything. But that's it. Like, hormones were fucking great, and I want them back badly. So badly. Oh my god. I fucking miss hormones. I smell like asshole all the time now, like even right after I take a shower. I don't know what it is, but just like, it's weird. Like, I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way, but I feel like dudes just kind of have a different smell from women, mostly. Like, obviously there's exceptions to every rule, and like, I don't know how it is for non-binary people, but like, I know my smell changed very drastically when I was on hormones, which is weird to say, but it just made me feel so much like cleaner and nicer all the time. I feel like a greasy fucking disgusting like slime ball without my hormones. And the fucking, like, my facial hair is coming back because I had laser, but then, you know, I got off my hormones, so my testosterone went up, and so a whole bunch of it started growing back, and so, like, it's still not quite back to the way it was before laser, but I'm not looking good, and I'm pissed off about it. I'm gonna have to get my fucking facial hair removed again somehow, and I'll probably go with electrolysis this time, just to make sure that it can't regrow like that, but it's such a fucking waste. I went through a lot of pain and bullshit to get it taken out, and then it grows right back because everything in my life just kind of fell apart all at once. I fucking hate it. I want my hormones back. I'm sick of this shit. But yeah, transition regrets do happen. If you are an example of such a story, your perspective is totally valid. You are entitled to your feelings. And, you know, if you have been through transition and later found out that it's not what you wanted and it made you feel worse, that's terrible, and I wish it never happened to you. But the matter is unfortunately politicized to the point of being incoherent, screaming at each other, and it's just not productive. There is no point, no end to this discourse. There's no reward for anyone but whoever shouts the loudest, and it's fucking stupid. People's stories, their pain and shit that they've gone through are just being wielded like a club to beat down other trans people who want their fucking hormones. Like, as much as there are like a handful of people that have transitioned and regretted it, there's a shitload of people who want to transition, and, you know, it could fucking save them. Like, you know, I think we all know and agree that the suicide attempts and success rate for trans people is fucking astronomically high. Like, that's just an established fact at this point. And a lot of the times that has to do with familial rejection and just how hard to transition it is. Like, you know, it costs so much money and you have to jump through all of these hoops and everything. And people want to make that harder for the, like, less than 0.1% of us who regret it to prevent that from happening. But I don't think making transition harder to access is going to help that. But of course they aren't concerned about actually helping that. That's just their excuse for trying to legislate transition out of existence, basically. And that's not at all the way to handle transition regret. And especially counterproductive is trying to overstate its, what's the word I'm looking for? Not quite rate. Fuck. We'll just go with rate. Overstate the rate at which it happens. Overstate its commonality, maybe. That's probably a better way to say it. Like, using this whole thing for an anti-transition or anti-trans agenda is both counterproductive in terms of, like, helping people who might actually, you know, transition and then later regret it, but it's also just fucked up on so many levels. and it's hurting trans people, and that's exactly why they do it, because the end goal is really just to hurt trans people in any way that they can. And they think if they find people who have been through something bad, they can point to them as like an aggrieved party and just prey on people's sympathy for people that have been through shit, and just use that as an excuse to make the rest of us suffer. And it pisses me off. There's no point to it. There's no use to it. And it's fucking unfair to everybody involved. But, yeah, I can't think of any other points I was going to make. Which I'm surprised. I thought I was going to be sitting here at least another, like, fucking half hour talking about this before I started recording. I've been thinking about this episode for months. But I guess what I've said is about all the material I've managed to come up with. I just know that as soon as I stop this recording, I'm going to think of something that I wanted to say but didn't say, and I'm going to be so pissed off. And I might just fucking scrap this episode entirely and redo it. Oh, fuck. Get back here. There we go. This one can be tricky on hard because they keep getting downed before I shoot all the fucking crates. And my teammates can't pick me up because they're too busy getting their asses kicked. Even on normal, it can be a bit tricky sometimes because you're busy trying to hold off the hordes while you... Oh, shit. Okay. I've been enjoying the hell out of this game, though, honestly. It doesn't have much content in it yet. It's only got, you know, a handful of missions and not too many weapons and only just 4 characters, but I just know that it's gonna scale up like Payday. They're just gonna keep adding stuff to it. Like, just the other day, they added a double-barreled shotgun, and they're already planning on adding a TT-33 Tokarev pistol and Detransitioning machine gun. I believe it's the DP-28. World War II weapons are not entirely my forte. I'm more of a modern combat rifles person, but, you know. God, that's another one I can talk about. It's like trans women and, like, traditionally masculine interests. Oh, fuck. Because that's another way in which we get fucking screwed over. It's funny, there's this, like, Schrodinger's cat thing going on. There's Schrodinger's perfect trans woman, where people are like, oh, I'm not transphobic, I just think trans women are wrong because either they enforce stereotypes of women or they're men that, you know, keep all their same interests but put on a dress and think that makes them a woman. So, like, you know, there's this impossible middle ground where, like, you're not enforcing stereotypes of women, but you also have no masculine traits. Like, okay, how does that work? What does that look like? People are just like, to be an acceptable trans woman, you have to be this, but not this. But by being this and not this, that makes you this, so you're still not valid. So, it's not that I hate trans women, I just think acceptable trans women are literally impossible. So, you hate trans women then. God, I could do another fucking episode on that. I think that might be it for this one, though. I'm not thinking of anything else. I think I pretty much got to everything I wanted to get to. So yeah, in summary, just listen to trans people. That's kind of the easy way to avoid all of this. If someone has a regret story, listen, but for all of the rest of us, the very vast majority of us who don't use that one person's story to make our fucking lives harder. They're already fucking rough, unbearable for a lot of us. And making that worse is kind of really fucked up. Some people might say it makes you a murderer. Technically it doesn't, because of course you're not killing anybody with your own hands, but I mean, you would be kind of advocating for something that would lead to a lot of trans women giving up on life. So, I mean, your effect would be similar. yeah, just listen to trans people. Don't be a dick. Um, if you're not cool with trans people, don't pretend that you care about somebody in order to push an agenda that punishes us for existing. And yeah, I guess that's it. I'll see you guys next time.